Yeah, I'm not
And
sharing.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. So here is our 10th Industry Partnerships Subcommittee public meeting of the FAC. So we're getting back at it. People will be joining in, but we'll do a quick roll call here. So we have Kristen, Farad, David, Nigel, Mamie. So we definitely don't have a quorum, but we're not planning to make any big decisions today. So we are good to go. And then folks will join in as they can. So there's a couple of people that did let us know we're not going to be able to join. I see we have a couple of people in the waiting area. I'm going to make sure that we admit them. Okay. So today, as Kristen said, we're going to just kind of jump back into things. I did want to let everybody know that GSA has continued to review the recommendations report. And so there is a very intense effort going on right now across the agency to really look at every recommendation with a fine-tooth comb and really look at where these recommendations could be implemented. I can talk a little bit more about that later in the meeting, but definitely there'll be more to come in terms of GSA having some feedback in the initial recommendation. So lots more to come on that. But, and then in a little bit, I'll introduce Jara Medor, my colleague from GSA as well. We're going to talk about challenge.gov, but not quite yet. So I'm going to go ahead, done the roll call, done the quorum, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kristen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Boris. Sorry about that. I kind of jumped ahead. We had such a soft opening.
No worries.
Yeah, so if for those, and David, will you be able to share the Jamboard as we go forward, or Boris, one of you, while we work on it? So as Boris mentioned, and I think the folks that were on here were on the previous meeting, but we did get some preliminary feedback from GSA on our recommendations, and they asked us to take another step forward of refinement on both of the recommendations, and we'll talk about that today. And also set some goals for ourselves on what we'd like to accomplish relative to some of that informal feedback. And then we'll also get additional feedback when they're done with their formal process. So based on that informal feedback, we put the agenda together for today, which is to talk about the next steps around recommendation number 1, which was how can we bring more innovative new entrants into the federal marketplace? And we're going to get an overview on challenge.gov from Boris and one of his colleagues, Jara. And so we're looking forward to that. And then we're going to talk about maybe do some brainstorming on some potential challenges. One of the things we got feedback on was maybe providing a pipeline of potential challenges that GSA could consider and why, like what is the objective of those. And then we'll talk about speakers. For recommendation number 2, we're going to do a little bit more discovery, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get into that. And we'll talk about some speakers. And then if we have time, we'll go to recommendation number 3. Because it's the summer coming up and we're just kind of re-ramping up, we did also want to have a little bit about a discussion around our cadence and our ability to get some things done over the next 6 weeks. So what I laid out here for you all is just our schedule. So our public meetings are every 3rd week. We're going to continue with that trend. So we're meeting today, and then we'll have, Boris, do I have this correct or wrong? June 28th will be an admin meeting, or is June 28th the chair's meeting?
Yeah, June 28th would be an admin meeting. That is correct.
Okay, it will. Thank you. So we'll have an admin meeting, which we try and keep those a little shorter, try and keep those to an hour. So we'll be able to work on what we kind of pulled together today. And then potentially we have a chair's meeting the 3rd week. That's the holiday week.
The holiday week, right. And
Yep.
we'll find a date other than the 4th of July.
No. Yeah. And then we'll be back for our 2nd public meeting, July 12th, continue with the cycle, and then come back for our 3rd public meeting, August 2nd. And what I laid out for us as a goal line would be to potentially have, a couple of challenges ready to tee up to create a pipeline for challenge.gov. And then from a maturity model perspective, maybe have a framework visual. That was some of the feedback we got on what some of the key capabilities and key maturity milestones can be, but I'll talk about that more. So what I guess I'm really trying to say is I'd like us to work narrowly and kind of get to this next step in the next 3 cycles. It's not a formal recommendation, but I think it'll allow us to get a foothold, and then we can delve into some of our other recommendations that are still out there. So maybe before we jump into recommendation number 1, we can have a little bit of discussion around this, the feasibility of this. And then I know there'll be a lot of probably conflicts with vacations and things like that. So, Farad, any comments?
No, that's where we wanted to start with this group, is to kind of figure out, and this meeting may not go as long as we think, but we wanted to kind of have everyone group thinking in this process. So as we go forward, we'll know what the schedule is going to be like, how we're going to participate, and maybe when we can go into our smaller groups to come back with some actionable items to share with the whole group. Okay,
good point. Yeah, and I would think we should be able to, I'd like to see us break into our smaller groups quickly for these little mini sprints, and then come back together each session. So I see Kimberly's joined us. Hi, Kimberly, how are you? Probably just getting her audio going. But Kimberly, thank you for joining us.
I have a question. Are most of us in the DC area, or we're outside of DC? I mean, Farad, I know you're outside, but you're not that far away.
I think we have 3. We have somebody from Philadelphia. We have about 3 or 4 that are outside of the DC area, I think.
Okay.
Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. Yeah, the majority, maybe you're right, the majority of this subcommittee, members of this subcommittee, are in the DC area.
Okay. I didn't know, so the reason why I'm asking the question, I didn't know if it would help if we got together face to face and worked based on if we had a core group around. That's all.
Yeah, you're entirely possible. Actually, Stephanie, I'm volunteering Stephanie. She hasn't joined in, but she's in the DC area as well. She lives in Woodbridge. So that would be entirely possible if you wanted to do face-to-face. And we can use the space at GSA. We have plenty of space at GSA that we could use. I'm actually in Florida, Mamie.
Oh, you're in Florida, okay.
I am, but Stephanie is in the DC area, so that is entirely possible.
Yep, definitely. Okay. Any other, does this seem like a reasonable lift for us to get accomplished in the next 6-7 weeks? Won't be any formal reporting, but I'd like to get us to at least kind of a next mini step forward. And then we can probably get some feedback from GSA, Boris, if we're moving in the right direction, and then accelerate that.
Are there any opposition?
Okay.
So silence is acknowledgement of affirmative. Yes.
Okay. So with that, what we wanted to do before we started getting into recommendation 1 is we wanted to get a briefing on, just to make sure we can educate ourselves, we're all well grounded in what challenge.gov is, how it works, and how that might inform us for moving forward with coming up with some potential recommendations. So Boris, I'll turn it back to you and you can introduce your colleague. And thank you again, Jara, for joining us. And Boris, thank you for coordinating that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first of all, it's really a great pleasure to have my colleague, Jara Medor, here today to really talk about this great process that's called challenge.gov. I came across this process about 4.5 years ago, almost. And basically, I was working with a team out of GSA that was supporting the previous administration on the President's Management Agenda. So we have a team at GSA that does that. And one of the things that came to us was the previous administration was looking at establishing some kind of center, we call it the GEAR Center, the Government Effectiveness Advanced Research Center. And it was geared for management type challenges. And actually a lot of the things that we've been talking about, even in acquisition. And so we were looking for a mechanism where we can bring in some competitors to bring ideas into two things. One is how will we set up a center like that at the government, like a partnership? And then what kind of projects would this center work on? So that was the idea. And then to our good fortune, we came across challenge.gov, and it happened to be in GSA. It was right in our own backyard. And so that's how I connected with Jara back in the day. And I'd love to say it was an extremely successful process for us. It was extremely intense, I will say. And I'll talk a little bit more about my experience doing that particular challenge, the Gear Center. But what I want to do is, and I'll let Jara kind of introduce herself because she's got quite a background at GSA, really, really strong proponent of this process and someone that really knows a lot about this whole crowdsourcing space and how it works in the government, especially in the government, because there's a lot of crowdsourcing out there, but in the government, there's some special ways. So without further ado, Jara, I'm going to bring you on.
Thanks so much, Boris. And thanks to you all, to the FAC, for allowing me to come in and give a little bit of a primer on the federal government's use of prize competitions to promote innovation. Is it okay if I share my screen? I did bring a few slides.
Yeah, cool? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, right here. All right. Let me know when y'all are able to see them.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. So there we go. So prize competitions are not new to the federal government, to any government. In fact, if you're a fan of Spam or canned meat, you can thank Napoleon and his prize competition that was run in the 1700s. Napoleon had a problem. He was losing more soldiers to starvation and malnutrition than to war. Also, the British Navy, they were losing vessels and seamen because they were getting lost at sea. And so they needed to develop a technology that would allow the Navy to navigate effectively to points of interest and concern. That challenge was called the Longitude Challenge. You may have read a book that was released in the last few years that describes that prize competition. Also, the U.S. Capitol building design was sourced via a prize competition. The DC flag was sourced via a prize competition, and the design was based on George Washington's family coat of arms. The White House, also, the design was sourced via a prize competition. So governments have been using prize competitions for centuries to source innovation, especially when the solution is not found within the walls of the government. So although government's been running prize competitions for centuries, it wasn't until 2010 that every federal agency received the authority to run prize competitions. Prize authority was established via the reauthorization of the America Competes Act. This act gave the head of every federal agency the authority to run prize competitions. It was amended in 2017 with the American Innovation and Competitiveness Act to specifically name challenge.gov as a platform that agencies could and should use when announcing their prize competitions. Competes Act also gave GSA a specific role in supporting the use and diffusion of crowdsourcing and prize competitions across government. Via the Competes Act, GSA was mandated to facilitate and support the use of prize competitions across the federal government. And I'll describe a little bit later how we do that. Also, on the heels of the passage of Competes with the M1011 memo, it stated that GSA would establish a platform that federal agencies could use to host their prize competitions. Since the passage of Competes in 2010, we've seen about today, as of today, it's 851 prize competitions that have been launched using Competes Act authority and hosted on the challenge.gov platform. A diversity of agencies and offices and bureaus and divisions across the federal government have used prize competitions to engage solvers in innovation. A conservative estimate of the amount of prize funds that have been deployed via prize competitions is about $500 million. But in addition to cash prize awards, agencies have also awarded other things that have other value. And we can describe that a little bit here in a minute. What is challenge.gov? So challenge.gov is a program that lives within GSA's Technology Transformation Services Division. The mission of TTS is to deliver a digital government by and for the American people. And so within TTS, the challenge.gov platform really serves as a bridge that allows federal agencies to engage directly with the public, whether that's academia, private institutions, nonprofit organizations, or individuals to solve prize competitions. The challenge.gov program, we provide consultative services. So on any given day, I will meet with a handful of agencies who are seeking to use prize competitions to solve a problem. So we provide consultative services really on any aspect of the prize competition process, as Boris can attest to. We also support the federal-wide community of practice. There's about 800 feds, .gov and .mil federal employees who are open innovation practitioners or are interested in the methodology, and we support this community. We hold biweekly office hours. We support knowledge transfer via toolkits, templates, webinars. We bring people together to talk about their work, design sessions, on and on. We develop practical toolkits. Really, our program is across the federal government, really helps to support anyone who wants to use a prize competition to connect with the public. On the platform side, we've built advanced infrastructure that is secure. Our platform lives in a secure FISMA moderate cloud.gov environment. It is a shared service across the federal government that is free for anyone to use. As long as you have a .gov or a .mil, you can create and publish and host your prize competition on our site. This platform has intuitive user experience, workflows. We are accessible. We adhere to the 21st century idea. Also, our code is made available. It is open source for anyone who wants to take this crowdsourcing methodology code base and deploy it in their own local environment. So federal agencies are using prize competitions really to accomplish a diversity of goals. Some agencies use prize competitions to develop new algorithms or to create new data architecture structures or to clean data or to gather data. These are data analytics challenges. Some agencies are using prize competitions to develop business cases and to promote entrepreneurship. Others are, as many of the kind of historical examples I gave you, are using prize competitions for design purposes. Many agencies like NIH use prize competitions to do a level of scientific discovery and development. Some agencies are developing software and hardware. Technology demonstration competitions represent the most rapidly growing category of prize competition across the federal government. In the past 2 years, we've seen a 143% increase in federal agencies running technology development multi-stage competitions. Here I have a couple of examples of how agencies are using prize competitions to support their mission. Boris has introduced the Gear Center Challenge, and I believe he'll talk a little bit more about Gear Center. Gear Center Challenge was a GSA-sponsored challenge. It was a multi-stage competition. The GSA TTS Center of Excellence, the AI Center of Excellence, recently has invested in kind of a series of prize competitions called the Applied AI Challenge. The reason that they're running these competitions, and they're running them on a variety of topics. The most recent topic has been, well, the one they're launching next week is generative AI, but the most recent competition that closed was related to AI and healthcare systems. The reason they're running these competitions is because they're trying to bring new leading edge companies who do not work with the federal government into the fold. They want to see who is out there and reward the concepts that these companies are putting forward and introduce them to other federal agencies for follow-on direct activities. So there's many different benefits of prize competitions. The benefits to the federal government are valuable. The most, if you read the America Competes Act, what you'll see is that it is a quick read. It is open to interpretation. Many different agencies interpret the different clauses of competes in different ways, and that has value. The America Competes Act allows federal agencies to partner with entities inside of the federal government, other federal agencies, and entities outside of the federal government. More than 71% of prize competitions that have been run in the last 2 years have been run in partnership. Some examples of partnerships outside of government are NIST partnered with the NFL on a head health challenge. NIH has partnered extensively with the Gates Foundation on vaccine development challenges. And these partnerships allow for a flexibility in how you partner with these organizations. In some cases, it's the partner will offer up subject matter experts who can help to define the requirements of the challenge. Some of the experts participate in evaluation capabilities and reviews. Sometimes these entities are providing the funding for a prize competition or to support the administrative cost of a competition. What we've seen time and time again is that federal agencies are bringing new talent to the problem via prize competitions. When we've asked, we found that more than 80% of winners of prize competitions have never before engaged with the federal government in any form of contracting or grant making. Also, prize competitions allow the federal government to pay for success instead of praying for success, like we often do with some of our more traditional sourcing mechanisms. And more agencies are using prize competitions as an on-ramp for direct activities. So they'll use prize authority for phase 0, concepting, initial testing and prototyping. And then if the government derives value from the winning solutions, they invite them to then submit a proposal to a BAA, for example, or invite them. In some agencies, they're considering winning a competition as grounds for sole source for acquisitions. So it allows us to kind of test and build a relationship, see what the innovator has, and then go forward. Agencies are also using prize competitions to develop requirements for follow-on traditional sourcing mechanisms. Benefits to innovators: your selection is not based on past performance. So unlike contracts and grants where we ask you to provide resumes and describe the team, with prize competitions, who you are is blinded to the reviewers. And in that way, we're able to select based on the quality of the submission, not the submittor. Also, prize competitions are no strings attached funding. There are no reporting requirements. The funding is directly deposited into the account of the winners. So it doesn't create an administrative burden on either side. Also, intellectual property remains with the innovator. Prize competitions are not subject to buy-dole. There's not an intellectual property encumbrance on the winner. If you win a prize competition, unless the government takes some form of license, the intellectual property stays with you. And also, as I've said before, agencies are using it as an opportunity for follow-on. We have a competition right now that's live, that's an Army competition where the winners of the competition are invited to leapfrog over SBIR phase 1 and directly submit proposals for SBIR phase 2, for example. So agencies are really using competitions to open the door for follow-on activities. I know I've said a lot in a short amount of time, but these are all the ways that you can engage with the challenge.gov program if you're interested. As I said, I'm at GSA, and my job is literally to help you, if you're a federal employee, to help you in your endeavor to run prize competitions. And so with that, I want to hand it back to you, Boris. And
Thank
I'll
you so
stop
much.
sharing. Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yara. I'm going to speak for a little bit. I'm going to also share my screen, and I want to illustrate how this process works on a case, so you can kind of see a use case and how the process went. Then I want to do some Q&A with Yara and myself for all of you to really engage in a conversation. So let me do that right now. And can you all see my screen? All right, great. So the process that Jar was talking about, like I said, it is impressive. And I really had the privilege of working with some great people in designing this challenge. And you can kind of see, we wrote a case study in the challenge.gov site. There is a space where we have some case studies. And we wrote this one up a little bit here. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things here. The main thing that I wanted to show you is we were really after an idea. This was a fairly nebulous thing that OMB came to us. It's about 4.5 years ago at GSA, and we were supporting them on President's Management Agenda projects. And essentially, we wanted to test the idea. Here's the goal: to see if the government could build this Government Effectiveness Advanced Research Center model and actually test it with some projects, sample projects, as a viable idea before investing a lot of money into building this research center. So we have research centers for cancer, we have research centers for biofuels and different things, but the government really wasn't doing anything when it came to like solving complex management challenges or how to run the government. Essentially, that was the idea. So when we did this, we developed an objective statement. And then within GSA, I actually have a colleague too that went to work for OMB. She did such a good job that OMB hired her. So she's over at OMB. And the two of us basically sat down and we started designing the challenge. Now, Jara's team provided templates. They provided samples. And they basically said, okay, before you do anything, you need to look at what this looks like in terms of an intake. You know, what are the pieces that you need to put together? And so we spent, I would say, a couple of months at least working with stakeholders in defining the challenge, defining the goals. And because it was a fairly high dollar amount that we were looking to award, it was $900,000, just under $1 million. We needed the GSA administrator's approval. So that was the second time I've been in the principal's office, first with this challenge. And then the second time, because of the GAFAC, I was in the office of the administrator talking about the GAFAC. But when we went in there, basically, we defined it. We were able to work the process. It was very well laid out for us. And then we designed the challenge to essentially work in 3 phases. So we were running this competition in 3 phases. And so what we ended up seeing out of the competition is we have solver teams come at us from small business, large business, academia, so on and so forth. Actually, the organizations that you all represent in this committee in many ways. And then we have projects that came at us from all kinds of topics: workforce, data, customer experience, IT modernization, you name it. And so in doing our selection, we got 49 teams that came in. We had to set up a judging process, because that's the other aspect of this, is you want to have the right people judging the solver team, people that can actually make some good evaluations of the teams, and you have to have criteria. So all of this gets laid out in the challenge. When you define the challenge, when you're interested in participating, you're going to have everything you need to know. You're going to have the objective, you're going to have the instructions, exactly what you need to submit, and you're going to know how you're going to be evaluated. So in doing so, we were able to award 3 prizes for the top 3 teams that came in. And these are the topics. We don't not necessarily get too much into the topics, because there were really cool ideas that we got to see come to the table. And so we have some honorable mentions here as well. So there was a lot of publicity that went along with this. And one thing I wanted to emphasize here is that this was publicized extensively. And so we were sending those demand signals. The government is interested in this, and so on and so forth. So we were able to see a lot of publicity happen here. So kind of scrolling through here quickly, I wanted to just run through the phases where we had the first gap we had, just a 3-page proposal. We had 49 teams that came in with a 3-page proposal. We weren't asking for a lot, but we just kind of wanted to see how serious these teams were. And from here, we were able to, and we laid this all out in the instructions. So everyone that participated knew what to expect. We were able to narrow this down to 20 teams at the second phase. And we had judges for every one of these phases. And then the second phase, we were able to look at more detailed proposals of a project that will be running through this center. And I'm kind of running through a lot of stuff here. But going through this evaluation, we were able to narrow it down to 10 finalists. And then we had presentations. So these were delivered in person at GSA. Actually, some of them were delivered virtually. We had some virtual presenters, and they basically gave a pitch. Here's what we propose to do, these 10 finalists. And then the panel of judges were able to assess the information that was provided and then made a decision on who the 3 winners were. So that's a little bit on that process. I didn't want to spend a lot of time showing you, more screens. But I want to say this, it's for those of us who were designing and actually doing all the legwork, it was a full-time job for, I'd say 4 to 6 months. We were definitely, 2 of us were, this is what we were doing day in, day out, just because it was moving fast. Also, we had the end of the year, end of the year process that happens in the federal government. End of September, we got award money, so we had a time constraint. So there was always that there, so we couldn't slow down. We did listening sessions with solver teams so they could ask questions throughout the process. We brought in subject matter experts to talk about the different areas. So this was a really complex challenge when you think about all the different areas we covered, because it's a specific challenge about one area, you might be able to narrow things down a little bit. So that was one thing that made this one particularly difficult. So in the end, though, I feel like we had a really solid process, great outcome, great publicity for GSA and then for the administration as well. And then once we awarded the prize for the 3 winners, then as Jara said, there is no requirement for progress reporting. This is not a contract, so they're not, they get this money and you don't really care what they do with the money. I mean, that is money that's the result of their great idea and their efforts. And we're also not paying them for the effort they put into the process to submit the proposal. That's the other thing here. So they put significant effort. One of the winning teams was headed by MITRE Corporation. So we do a lot of work with MITRE on a couple of things. And they had a team of, there are 4 different organizations. They had academia, they had nonprofit, and they put really a solid proposal that, that's one of the 3 that I particularly remember. So I did set up some touch points with them after they were given the prize money, and it was just to kind of hear how things were going. It wasn't me to asking, okay, what are you doing with the money? It was more how are things going? How are you able to move out on this idea that you were going to implement? So that was the gist of it. Throughout the process, I always had Jara and her team available to help. There's a technology aspect to this, and that's, that part definitely can consume a lot of time, but I always had the people there available to help us move forward. So I feel like it's a good process, and I think for what we're trying to do here, I think it really fits the bill really well. So I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to just open it up for Q&A for Jara and myself, and let the team ask some questions of us.
So, Boris, the good part about this, thank you for sharing. The great part about this is that there's a template now, right? So when you're saying the things that you're saying, we could use that as a template to modify. We don't have to really recreate the work.
Right. And the good thing for the GAPFAC is that GSA implements the challenge. So, but we will help design, I say we, the subcommittee, you would design the challenge in terms of here's the objective, here's what we would need to do. So the heavy lifting actually GSA will perform to actually run the challenge. You see what I'm saying, Farad? Yeah.
Could you even have them, but it sounds like as a shared service to the government, you could actually, part of our recommendation might also be to create a call to action for challenges that support, finding innovative new entrants relative to climate and sustainability. And maybe we could define those down, like, biodegradable textiles or car battery. We could define some segments, and then maybe agencies like EPA and DOE, they could weigh in and say, you know what I mean? You could have a call to action for other agencies to contribute. I'm just, the shared service part kind of got my attention, because we might not be the subject matter experts nor GSA on the domain of what we're trying to attract from.
Right.
So just a thought there, or they could help inform that. You could do an information call, right, to get some, I'm just thinking out loud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very, very informative. I have a couple questions, but we'll go around the horn here and see who else has a couple questions. If not, Jari, you mentioned a statistic, and I want to make sure I got it straight. Did you say 80% of the competitors or 80% of the winners have never dealt with the government?
The winners.
So that's exactly what we're trying to target. So I think that's a really, really important stat as to why this might be helpful. Go ahead, Nigel. Sorry, I see your hand.
No, thanks. And you touched on one of them, which is how do we leverage what other agencies are already doing and get into their networks, trying to figure out what is the mechanism through which you can do that? How do you get that message out? Because that's why I was, before you joined, I was talking about the Community Navigator program that's through SBA. I know EPA runs a couple things, Department of Energy runs a couple things. How would this tool be able to reach through their networks? Because they're reaching people that, we don't necessarily reach at GSA, or we don't necessarily reach at SBA.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting about like EPA and previously SBA, because they've had some turnover, but the prize leads at these agencies really have their finger on the pulse of all the opportunities that agency is kind of considering around different topics at any given time. And so the tool itself, the platform, doesn't allow you to go out across the federal government and identify what are the opportunities for partnership. That's still more of a manual process, but we could identify the right points of contact to ask them, and or work with OSTP, for example, to convene a working group around what are the opportunities for prize competitions on a variety of topics. And yes, Kristen, there are 6 competitions right now on challenge.gov from, I think they're from Fish and Wildlife that are the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Challenge Genius Prizes. And they go across 6 different topics, subtopics within conservation. And so you can run a series of competitions. I could imagine you having different competitions that are sponsored by different agencies as the primaries within this topic base. Or you could have one sort of omnibus competition with a few categories where different agencies will step up to pay the winners of that category, for example. With prize competitions, there's kind of an infinite combination of how you can design and administer a competition, because the partnerships clause is so flexible and free.
And I think the way you structured it, Boris, was very interesting, that there's an award for the winner of the competition, but then there's also potential for sole source contracting there. Because a lot of times the barriers of, a lot of the innovative firms don't want to deal with the federal government because it's not worth the paperwork, it's not worth the headache, and the margins are low as compared to commercial. But the ability to now have an avenue, have an entire pathway for your product or service that you don't have to go through the federal rigmarole, that could be a real opportunity to bring new people to the table.
Absolutely. And if it was sponsored by GSA, then you could have the diversity of authorities that GSA is able to work under, like CSO, procurement, et cetera, as the forms of direct activities.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think the other thing is GSA could also send a signal to other agencies of, like you were talking, Kristen. So even though this committee is devoted to GSA and advising the GSA administrator,
Yeah,
we do have, I mean, I said we have bigger ambition to see what we're doing here take hold government-wide. But I think that, and I could see our administrator, I mean, our administrator is a big proponent of both challenges and of this committee. So I think there's a nice intersection here for looking at it from the administrator's point of view.
So from a procedural standpoint, could we make a recommendation to GSA to address that gap that we just identified with the fact that this program doesn't have the authority to partner with the other agencies? That's done manually. Is that something we could address, or is that separate from GSA, that this program is separate from GSA?
Not necessarily. I think that's something worth exploring, Nigel. I think it'll be worth exploring because part of what you're talking about is process. You know, how do we make it easier for new entrants to get in
That's
the
exactly
federal marketplace? And I think GSA plays a big role in that. I see, Farad, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I was also going to ask, I think two things happens. One, we can use this with our partnerships to explain to our partners that they can do this if there are other industry partners that we want to support. But the one question I was going to ask to try to increase the utilization of diversity, is there any way in the awards that we can identify companies that are small or under 100 million? I mean, is there any way that we can categorize the winners so that we can ensure that there's really inclusion in that process? So we can say innovation, but the standard is, women-owned, small, under 10 million, blah, you know what I'm saying? Just to kind of get our industry partners active with the federal government in a way that they would want to engage. Just asking the question.
Absolutely. Agencies have used prize competitions to absolutely structure the eligibility to kind of a more precise focus. So there's a competition right now, a Navy competition right now where only companies that are in the Pacific Northwest are eligible to participate. So you can limit eligibility based on your requirements.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. Wow.
One thing that you would need to take into account, though, is how you're going to verify. And what we recommend in that case is only verify those you have selected for award and not because it's a huge administrative burden to put forward the verification process for eligibility for all entrants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Dr. White has posed a question. She wants to know, was there some specific communication channels that were used to bring in those new applicants and those winners that hadn't worked with the government before? And can you also remind her of how long it generally takes for the initiation of the competition to the announcement of the winners?
Sure. I can take the last part of the question, and then Boris, if you want to describe any communications kind of specific strategies y'all use, and I can talk about it in general as well. The typical timeline, there is no typical timeline it depends on what kind of the complexity of the design of your competition. I think that Gear Center was a little bit over a year, if I recall.
It's about a year. Mm-hmm. Yes, about a year.
Most multi-phase competitions last about a year, and a simple ideation single phase competition is usually about 5 months start to finish, from the point of announcement to the point of announcing the challenge to the point of announcing the winners of the challenge.
No, that's good. So in terms of bringing in the people to the table, the different communities, the way we did ours is we had I think there was roughly 10 different subject matter areas that we were looking at. So we work with these teams. So there was 10 different teams, cross-agency priority goal teams. So this is getting into geeky performance management stuff. But there were 10 different teams, and each of them had folks from agencies that basically had networks. And so we worked with each of those teams to get the word out of about the competition. So we used the GSA Office of Strategic Communications to help us put out blogs. And essentially we use some social media as well. So any avenue we had available to us, we just got the word out. But I feel like the way we got the most interest was working through the subject matter experts who basically expanded that through their networks well beyond even what we could do just at GSA. So that's how we did it. But I don't know, Jared, if you've seen other strategies for really reaching out. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here for what this committee is working on.
We found that exactly what you just said, the most effective outreach process is the individual relationship and the network of the subject matter experts and the leadership around your challenge. That's where you get people who will actually participate in the competition because you have that little line of trust between them and you. They believe the opportunity is real. It's hard for people to believe that the federal government just gives out cash awards with no strings attached. And so if you have, you all here who are serious people with serious networks, if you put the word out, they'll be more likely to join and share that opportunity. We do stakeholder mapping, influencer mapping, newsletters, social media, webinars. We create videos for challenges. We really deploy a variety of outreach strategies to bring a diversity of people to the problem. And so it's much different than a grant or a contracting activity. If you work with an outside firm to administer your competition as a professional service, they may also use PR strategies to engage the press around your competition. The typical GSA playbook is a press at the GSA leadership front office level. They'll release a press release, and then the GSA accounts across social media will blast and amplify the opportunity. But really, it's going to be the individual SMEs. But your team can create a communications package to help you and share that with your networks so that they're not having to create original content.
Mm-hmm.
We just answered one of my questions. So as we were talking, I was thinking about, so if we were to tee up these pipelines of or one umbrella type competition with categories or multiple competitions, Jared, just for your benefit. So part of our, like when we look at our mission, this recommendation is designed around expanding the supplier pool, innovating the supplier pool with folks that are doing things that can better address the climate and sustainability. They're not the normal government contractors, right? How do we go out and find them? How can we diversify the supplier pool? How can we make the supplier pool more resilient? So when you talked about the Pacific Northwest, Nigel, it reminded me of our discussion about regional resiliency and things like that. But then I was thinking, well, if we were to run all these competitions or recommend them, how would GSA source that? But GSA could resource that through, you just said it, they could have a professional services contract that helps run it and things like that. But just so it doesn't become kind of an over the fence type thing, right? They would have to have resources, people behind running these competitions.
Yeah, and Jared, I know you have a hard stop at 4 o'clock, so we got about 5 minutes of Jared. So any last minute things you wanted to say to the group, or maybe time for maybe another question for you?
Yeah, one thing that you can also explore, if you just want to kind of dip your toe in the water, even today, my team released a crowdsourcing campaign on challenge.gov that is not a competition. There's no prize award. And it's called Reach You, where we've identified through our data that only 10% of participants in prize competitions, federal competitions, have a .edu email address. So we're only reaching about 10% of academics in our processes. And so we've released a crowdsourcing campaign asking academia, tell us how to reach you. Tell us how you receive information, what streams or databases are important. And so we could run a crowdsourcing campaign out across to industry in these topics you're interested in, asking them specific questions that they then respond to. And that kind of puts the line in the water, getting them ready for a competition that may be coming. It gets their attention.
Yeah, definitely. That's great.
And it's free. And it's similar to an RFI, but we all know that RFIs are only seen by people who know to look for RFIs. And so you can release an RFI coincident with releasing a crowdsourcing campaign on challenge.gov. And that way FedRAMP did that for when they were rolling out the new FedRAMP model. They used both streams. And so that's something that you could do to get a sense of the platform and to get a sense of who's out there right now, who's listening, who isn't listening. And yeah, but yeah, I mean, a prize competition would allow you to reach those entities that don't typically work with the federal government. You know, when of those winners, those 80%, whenever we ask them, why didn't you ever work with federal government? What they said, two things. They would say, when we read the RFPs, we have no idea what you're talking about. They're very poorly written. And they say, the work doesn't seem very interesting. And so also they don't want to be encumbered by having a federal contract or a grant. It's easier to not work with the federal government than to work with us. And so with the prize competition, you know, in a multi-phase competition like Boris described, you can give seed funding. So the winners of phase one, in a lot of most competitions that are multi-phase, and about half of the ones on challenge.gov are, if you're a winner, a selectee from phase one, you're invited to phase two and you receive $20,000, no strings attached. And so that way it builds trust. That's a little bit of innovation capital that they can use to take their idea a little bit further and submit a much better proposal for the second round. There are a lot of things you can do here. I hope y'all use a competition model. If you decide to, let me know. We have contracts in place where you can work with my team. I lead about a dozen people who are experts in prize competitions within GSA. There are also BPAs, and there's a federal-wide IDIQ out of NASA that you can tap into to engage prize vendors. There's a whole ecosystem out there to support federal government's use of prize competitions.
Well, this has been awesome. I don't know the rest of the group feels. I've got a million questions for you. So we thank you very, very much for coming. And Boris, thank you again for reaching out and coming on in short notice. So you've given us lots to think about. You know, one of the other things, just Jared asked you to think about, maybe we'll loop back, but you know, part of it too isn't just the winner, right? It's identifying the market space of people and entities that are doing that work. You know, you're creating that signal for them to come, and then you find out that there's a whole sector of folks working on this. Who are they? Where are they normally found? That's part of what we want to accomplish too, not just like have the one winner on board, right? But create those avenues for that sector.
Amen.
On that topic, you know, what I eat, sleep, and breathe is prize competition design. And I'm always designing them, kind of like creating puzzles. When y'all were describing, you know, the little bit that I've heard here in this conversation, it really made me think, and back to something that Farad said about kind of segmenting participation. You could even run a competition, and it's been done before, where only accelerators that work in this space, that are the local innovation cluster kind of communities across the US, are eligible to submit entries. And in that way, they're bringing forward their book of small business that works in the space that is not working with the government yet. Mm-hmm. And in that way, you could resource them to kind of create that relationship. It'd be a really good diffusion model.
Yeah.
You'd probably have great impact by doing something like that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was just talking to somebody from investment. They invest in small innovative companies, and they're like, we don't even know they don't know how to get to the government, you know. So that if you can connect to those people that are connecting to that community, you have exponential reach versus, you know, singly targeting folks. So,
right, versus the onesie twosie kind of
yeah,
situation. Yeah, I think that you could do a lot in a short amount of time if you did that sort of connect to the network approach through a prize competition.
okay. That could help us with recommendation 3 too.
Well, Jara, we're right at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
short notice. I just got a hold of Jara yesterday, so that's the kind of friend you are. Jump right in
Of course.
with 1 day's notice. But I really appreciate it, and you're definitely hearing from us some more as we move forward here.
Great, great. Have a great day. Thanks, y'all. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Kristen. So that hopefully that gave you a kind of a snapshot. I've been talking in generalities about challenges, but now you kind of have a picture of what they are.
Definitely.
And so I'll turn it back to you, and again, we can definitely engage Jara just about any time.
Great. Okay, so let's just, if we can go back to the Jamboard, you guys have the Jamboard in your chat. And if we go to tile number 2, so to get to tile number 2, you go up top. And then is somebody able to share
Hey,
the
Kristen,
Jamboard?
would you like me
Yes.
to share?
Yes, please, if you wouldn't
Yes,
mind.
ma'am.
Thank you. And
No-
if you
no
go to
problem.
tile number 2, that'd be great.
And could you please resend the link as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just did. Mhm.
Can you see it, Kristen? And
I
team?
can, yep, that looks
Okay,
great.
great.
So, and Mamie, if you just want to, you can just call them out and we'll put a sticky in there for you. The sticky's really so we have a documentation of it. So what I thought we could do for a few minutes, everybody, is kind of let's just do some brainstorming of what could be some potential challenges that GSA could sponsor. There's no right or wrong answer, and I don't think there's any right or wrong, broad, narrow type thing. We just want to get some juices flowing here. So to remind everybody, you grab the sticky note and you click on that and you'll get a sticky note, and you can just type in what you think. I put a couple in here as examples just to get people's juices flowing. So let's take a few minutes and work on that. So again, based on what you've heard and based on what we've been putting together for this recommendation, what type of challenges might we want to create to put into a pipeline to recommend to GSA? No right or wrong answers. You guys have any questions? So you come over here and you click on the sticky on the right. On the left, I guess it would be the left. I just want to do a process check. Is everybody still with us? I don't see any stickies coming on the board.
We're typing. You're hearing lots of clicking in the background.
Okay. Just double checking. I was like, hello. Thank you for the typing sound. I appreciate that.
All right, I just hit save and it disappeared and mine was in blue. So if you guys see a blue thing pop up,
Yeah.
I don't know where it went, but it's there.
Plant-based biodegradable materials.
Yes.
Yep, it's there.
Okay, so I'm gonna do another one in blue.
Not seeing that one. Oh, there it is. Okay, it says collect proposals. Okay.
That's reusable.
I have to admit that I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. It's only because I think of our subcommittee is doing something that's more long-term as opposed to sort of finite things. Maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way, but
Well, I think like initially we were thinking about, like Nigel brought up the idea about, the electric cars, but what companies are out there figuring out what to do with those batteries, once the car is gone? That's like a subsector. So we might run a challenge that only focuses on kind of that, or we might run a challenge that focuses on, I think we like the policy subcommittee on single-use plastics, right? So then would we run a competition that might identify companies that are creating solutions or replacements of environmentally friendly replacements of single-use plastics?
Presumably they would have to go through the same process. I mean, well, that's a question. Do they have to go through the same process of, if we're going to track, let's say, avoided emissions, or however we want to calculate or at least put a metric on sort of reducing climate risks? How does that plug into other aspects of documenting that?
Well, I think that's where I think Jara or Boris mentioned there has to be some sort of validation. The more requirements you kind of put on the competition, though, has a little less restriction. So, well,
right. And I've been involved in a prize competition run by DOE, where it kind of whittled down. You had a huge field, and then the ones that made to phase one were the only ones eligible for phase two, and you kind of winnowed your way down to a handful of ultimate winners in phase three. I'm not sure if that approach works here, but it was always something fairly finite that the government wanted private sector to figure out for itself, and it was a way to bootstrap that.
Yeah, it definitely works. The challenge that I designed and helped run was actually pretty broad, David. So it was one that it wasn't a specific problem we were trying to solve. So we were looking for ideas on how to set up a center, like we were saying, the gear center. And the second thing is we're looking for what kind of projects would we want to run through a center like this. And we actually asked for specific, that's where we asked for the specifics. So give us exactly what kind of project would you run through a center like that. And then they actually brought those ideas to the table. And then they did after they got the prize money, they went and implemented and actually run the projects.
I think somebody ate my stickies that I had on there originally. Where'd they go?
Unless they've been covered up and it's snapped over it, that there's actually one on top of another. I don't know if that's the case.
Or maybe somebody edited them. That's okay.
I have you mentioned the batteries, right? Moving to EV.
Mm-hmm.
What we do with the current batteries? Was that the question? The reason why I'm asking, because if that was what was stated, that is a lot to do with a number of other things that we will have to decide what to do with as well.
I think
Not
that
just
could be an
batteries.
idea. Yeah, I think that would be an idea for a challenge, maybe.
You
Like,
know, the
yeah.
broader picture, it won't be just batteries, everything that we go to, you know, just like the light bulbs and stuff that we started, you know, moving energy efficient light bulbs in the homes, and now we're doing, but what are we doing with those products that we're having to dispose of, or lack of a better word, re-engineer or reuse for reuse? How do we go about those?
Well,
That's exactly the point. You're right. That's exactly where I wanted to go with it, which is the batteries themselves. It's going to take years for us to we're going to create a short-term problem for ourselves if we don't be creative in how to dismantle and take out the unused parts, the broken parts, and replace them and recycle and reuse these different materials. Because if not, we're just gonna have to store them somewhere, which is never good given the chemicals.
Or create more landfills, no.
Right.
Yeah, so that has to be, yeah, I'm with you. I can see that.
There's
so
a
I
lot of
think
work.
the thing is broader than the battery.
From frame, okay.
At least in the battery space, there's a lot of work going on in parts of DOE. I'm involved with the resale center. There are hundreds of our members that are working on that problem right now, and they would be a solution for anyone, whether the federal government or anyone else. Company wants to have a fleet of EVs. Well, they'll have a contract with one of our members that will do all that work. They might repurpose the battery if it's good for stationary storage. There's a lot of options that are emerging, but you're right, Nigel. It is a problem that if we don't deal with it aggressively in the next 5-10 years, it's going to be a huge burden on everybody.
Right.
But there is a lot of work going on in that. I'm happy to talk offline about that.
But that's just one, but I'm getting at, you're just talking about one product. There are many more things that has to come out of the system.
Right.
And my recommendation is we can run independent competitions for each one of those. It's an unlimited opportunity to run special
identify
projects.
Each.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do it broadly, or you could run a competition that does it broadly, and then you have segments that you want to focus on, you know, that, right, you could set that.
Oh, just be aware that there's a whole lot of BIL and IRA money out there that's going to be going toward those kinds of things. So be good to coordinate, not have necessarily competing parts of the government, perhaps working across purposes. Just like EPA's draft national strategy on plastic pollution makes reference to GSA. So, you know, there are ways to sort of cross-reference those to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction, so to speak.
Okay, I just realized how inventory.
And I put a sticky there maybe to help capture the idea. Maybe it says ideas on disposing obsolete items, for example, batteries, just to kind of capture the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's hope this one saves. Okay, there we go. That's saved.
You're in there, Nigel. Does anybody remember what I had? I think I had one on the, I got this great presentation on textiles and bioplastics using biomass proteins. But again, this is a small company, you know, so like these are the types of, I was like, I didn't even know this was out here, you know, and they're doing a little bit of work with NASA.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had something very similar that was related to that I did not know existed when you guys told me about the reusable plastics, the packaging material. And I spoke to the guy at the university at Jackson State University that told me about what they're doing with industrial hemp. That's where I got the idea from, that they were using that to try to create paper, quote unquote, paper products or cardboard essentially, and the impact that would have. So similar, you use the term biomass. I like that is a little bit more flexible than just industrial hemp, but anything that is plant-based and biodegradable.
Yep.
You know, I was thinking about when she was talking around how to get some of these universities to engage. I was thinking how we could use the, you know, the HBCU initiative to be able to forward this out to these universities to get them engaged.
A lot of them got Department of Agriculture grants already and have already started the research. So,
right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That way, and then we can segment an HBCU could get the, you know what I mean? Like make sure that one of them wins.
I love it, because that would then address some of the outreach to non-traditional communities.
Correct.
Yeah.
You could categorize a competition just to focus on HCBUs around what they're doing for climate and sustainability. I mean, we could do that, and to say, because, you know, I think part of it is understanding what are the emerging segments and verticals that are coming out of these innovative new companies. They disrupt and they create. And so I envision you could run a academic categorization targeted towards HCBUs around, you know, this is more like the gear, like what are you doing relative to climate and sustainability and resiliency? And that could be the competition, right? And as those come in, that could be a leapfrog, or that could be a step competition to create a prize competition. You know, I think part of it is we don't even know what's out there. So trying to help create that spotlight to bring them in, and then work with the onboarding. Sorry, that was a long answer for that. Okay.
No, I think that's the kind of focus that we're talking about, right? If we can do that, and then we can also go to these other partners at the, you know, the women's business centers or the women's initiatives. You know, we want to show that we have a diversity in winners by categorizing who would win these competitions. But I think that's a great idea, Krista.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I'm plugging this stuff in. The idea of the sole source opportunity comes in for contractors who would not usually get access to certain contracts. And I'm thinking about folks who, like, even things like the facilities management contracts that includes everything in a cafeteria, right? It sounds small, but when you're looking at something like St. Elizabeth campus for Department of Homeland Security, when you're looking at something like near me, I've got the research center for Department of Agriculture. I've got, you know, Food and Drug Administration consolidation project over here on New Hampshire Avenue. So all of those are massive physical footprints that have things, disposable items that we don't even think of, that adds up to millions and millions of dollars that the government spends money on. How do we get people to say, you know, those forks and spoons don't need to be made out of plastic. We have something that's equivalent that could be grown in the US and biodegradable and have less environmental impact. Things like that. People, there are folks who are, how to make a better mousetrap. How can we get those folks in to have those discussions with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
even uniforms, right? Every police force within the federal government, every, you know, DHS, you know, CBP, ICE, they all wear uniforms. How do we,
TSA, yep.
Right, TSA uniforms, how do we use recycled materials or, you know, secondary, you know, materials of cotton excess or anything, industrial hemp, you know, nylon and those things, the recycled, how do we get those materials to be a part of that supply chain instead of what we currently use?
Definitely. Well, we keep the chat board, it's on the share drive. So as people get ideas, they can go in. So actually, you know, down here, I just put a couple comments like channels or categories, and Jara really opened our eyes to that, you know, and Boris, thank you. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be a specific competition. We could do it, we could have it based on a category or a channel. So like if HCBU is a channel, academic, HCBU, and then you could run a competition, or you could do just on biodegradable textiles, you know. So that's interesting. And then I wanted to see if we could just brainstorm a little bit on speakers for this domain that we're talking about here.
I'm sorry, I have one idea I want to share.
Go for it.
This is, GSA has this list now under the Ability One program, National Industries for the Blind, Source America. And those vendors employ, those nonprofits employ the persons with disabilities community, right? And they manufacture, I know I'm trying to back into, somebody help me frame this. And they manufacture, you know, that's mandatory sourcing for a lot of the government products and things. But that may be a group of vendors that you want to get engaged in some challenge.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm taking a note here, mandatory sourcing, or, you know.
Your guy, one of the GSA representatives he chairs the committee. I remember that in the introduction.
Mamie, you're talking about Jeff Koses. He is on the board of the Ability One.
Yes.
So he's one of the chief, who is our executive oversight over the whole committee. So
they have
Jeff is
hundreds of nonprofits, but this is also probably a talent pool that has not been tapped into for the innovation aspect.
Mm.
Just a thought.
Yeah, we have a sticky that says target specific communities. We got HBCUs. We can definitely add Ability One there just to capture that.
But I think there's another play on this. So, and you think about the mandatory sourcing groups and what they do, what they're doing. Some of the climate requirements, you could almost have the same unintended consequence, that they might get pushed out from a capability standpoint from these new technologies. But, you know, a lot of these, one of the challenges could be, how do you connect the companies that are creating the technology? Many of them don't want to build it out, right? So how do you, these mandatory sourcing groups, how do you future ready them to participate in the climate sustainability aspects of the federal marketplace? Could be another linkage type thing.
Yes, I agree.
Can I just add on to something Mamie just brought up? So vendors like Ability One, they may be in a category where there are those vendors that can receive sole source awards. Women-owned, small businesses, veterans, all of these different groups can receive sole source awards in some instances. So you may want to consider those different groups as well, because I think that's what I hear some of you saying, and it could narrow what you all are trying to do if you consider a specific category that you may want to look at.
Stephanie, that's what I want to do with regards to our outreach by leveraging the existing women's business centers, minority business development centers. They are out there, the SCORE, SBDCs, that the Community Navigator program that leverages like your Black chamber, your Hispanic chamber, your women's chamber to reach those non-traditional communities. Those are the ones that are, very likely certified in these programs that can get sole source awards. I think that's where I was going, how can we go through the existing pathways and say, this is a unique challenge that we have. Can you go find us folks in your community, and all of you go and spread the word to bring back folks that would be interested in competing?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying, Nigel, that and I appreciate you, Stephanie, expanding it, right? If we can talk around categories of groups that we would like to get introduced to get more engaged, have the winners be there. But what will happen is maybe we can start building relationships with these groups with GSA that are more, that are deepened, right? Because if we do this every year or every 2 years, they'll be expecting this kind of challenge coming for women and diversity and veterans and other groups, and they'll celebrate it. Just, I mean, we'll have a share. Our mission will be aligned and shared. But I think that's important because then you get exposure to things around climate solutions and things that they would not maybe have gotten a chance to. So yes, I agree.
You're creating a pipeline, right? Because then folks understand that folks are going to be innovative and jump into the industry, which is what we want to create.
Yeah. And I think it sounds like as we build out this, we can actually prototype our recommendation number 3, because we'll probably be reaching out to those groups and we'll almost have a proof of concept as to how that can be powerful. Right? Because if we do it around this recommendation and we kind of do it manually, it would demonstrate, I think, the power of that, reaching broader audiences by connecting these networking groups and creating those pipes. So excellent. All right. So what we'll need to think, I'd like everybody to kind of just be mulling this over. And when we have our admin meeting, we'll try and think about how we can curate into some next steps here. And then if there's speakers relative to, this is really more towards the innovative new entrants, or if we want to get somebody from an HCBU, somebody from an academic incubator. I had spoken to this gentleman, I shared with him what the FAC was all about, if he might be interested. So I'll put his name and what his company does, but they're all about big challenges, but they have a lot of innovative small companies. So, and it was funny when I asked him, I said, why don't you work with the government? It's, verbatim came out. Don't know how, don't know who, don't know. So interesting. But if you guys can be thinking about that also, I'd like to get a few speakers teed up. So based on time, I'd like to just switch gears a little bit and just if we can go to tab 3, switching gears to the maturity model, because what I'd like to be able to do, Boris, what I was thinking about was it would be good if we could get some folks to talk to us based on GSA's recommendation about the maturity model. And so I couldn't remember the third group you had mentioned, but we definitely would like to talk to NIST about their experience. I've got the contact with Greg Crabb, but then there was the group within the executive branch that you had mentioned, CE something.
Yeah, CEQ.
CEQ.
Yeah, the Council on Environmental Quality. And so they're part of the Executive Office of the President. And we've had Katie Newhouse speak at the Acquisition Workforce Subcommittee. Actually, that was the first speaker that they had. And we've interacted with her a couple of times.
Yes. And so this would be more now, now that we've kind of have this maturity model, it would be around, like with NIST, we want to understand how did they go from concept to developing and sponsoring. I think Greg can talk to us about values and benefits and how to get started. And then I think on CEQ, you thought they were already thinking about one, right? I think you said.
Right. And then also the thing about CEQ is a cross-agency reach that they have. So they also have the kind of the bird's eye view of other agencies and networks of people from other agencies that might already be thinking about this or developing something. So I think CEQ would be a good place to start.
Okay. I'm going to have outreach with Greg. Do you have any contacts with NIST that we could tap into? I thought somebody had said they did.
Yeah, NIST, I don't have any contacts with NIST. That's one organization. I don't know, Stephanie, if you may.
I probably can reach out to someone in this. I mean, every Friday with different offices. I could probably speak with Angela and see if she would be willing.
Okay.
Okay. And we can put together some questions to help frame out what it is we'd like to discuss with them.
Yeah. And I can do the ECQ contact. I can reach out to Katie.
Okay, and I'll reach out to Greg. And I think that will just help give us context about where, and the other thing that some of the feedback we got from GSA was around leveraging commercial providers. And so whether we want to have a redo with ITC, or there are some other groups we might want to talk to as we go forward. But I think we're still a little bit in discovery mode on this one as to what would be a logical next step. So my thought was, if we could get somebody for the admin and or the public, then that can help inform us, and we could kind of work on it going forward from there. It's a little less clear than the challenge.gov kind of focus. Okay. Excellent. Any other thoughts on this? I know this one's a little bit of a harder reach for folks.
So I have a thought, Kristen. I think one thing you want to be thinking about here is, as you're developing the concept for a maturity model, also the resources that will go along with it to help companies get to that level 1, level 2, level 3. So also thinking about, and I think you mentioned this before, Kristen, just the resources, the kind of how do we help a company to go from a level 1 to a level 2, like playbooks and that kind of thing. That thought, I think, is an important one.
Yeah, I'm just taking some
build
notes
into this.
Yeah, kind of what I've envisioned here, guys, is we could probably, over the next 6 to 7 weeks, straw man out based on these conversations with these folks. I think we would be able to straw man out, like, what are the key outcomes or channels of the model? So to your point, Boris, resources and playbooks, you know, and then what are these level of maturities? Like, what are those flagpoles going to be in the ground? So that as you try and drive the entire supplier base, you're trying to raise the whole ocean there. So I think if we could kind of come up with a straw man of that, it would help GSA kind of visualize how to go forward with the next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Kristen, should we be doing this in a smaller group, maybe, to get, I know this is a small group, but I mean a smaller group to get to the outcome that I'm just talking out loud, right? And then bring it back to the group to say, this is what we've come up with, or should we try to do this as an entire group?
I think hearing from NIST, CEQ, and if we can get Greg Crabb in, I think that the whole group would benefit from hearing from those folks.
Okay.
And then I think once we do that, we could probably break off and just kind of push forward on this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great.
I agree with that. And I think, you know, so I think after the next meeting, we'll definitely be ready to kind of break off and move forward. But I think this discovery part's important for everybody to hear. Because we're not, you know, it's going to help inform us as to what we want to do. Okay. All right, so I'm going to reach out. It looks like we divided up here. So I'll reach out to Greg, and then Stephanie's going to try for NIST, and Boris, you'll work on CEQ, and we'll see what we can come up with for either the admin or the public, right? Because it's really just discovery.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
I got a question on this. Does anyone know whether there are any states that have gone through this as well?
So I don't know, and that's where CEQ might be able to help answer that question. But it's definitely a good question, David.
I mean, there are some states that have sustainable procurement programs. I'm just wondering sort of how far along the maturity model, if they're on one, whether they know it or not, they are, if anybody happens to know. I don't happen to know. I was just curious whether anyone does.
Well, we have two state members with state experience. We had David Malone, both in Florida and Washington, and then Mark Hyder, I think Mark from New Mexico. So we have like 2 people that might.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Nicole in that subcommittee. I'm on that subcommittee, so I can reach out to that. I'll just put that as a question here. Because they seem to have a little bit more knowledge of what's going on at the local state level.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. And again, it's about climate sustainability, maturity relative to acquisition and procurement in the federal workspace. That's the key part, right? So, Boris, to your point, if the ruling comes out and all of a sudden you have to be able to calculate scope 3 emissions, how do you teach people how to do that, right? That's
right.
What's going to be key.
Right.
We don't want to lose ground.
Right, and there's at least 2 rules that are in the works right now, and they should be. I'll definitely keep everybody posted when they go out for review, advance notice of proposed rulemaking, and yeah, that's something we will definitely want to look at that when it comes out for folks to start reviewing.
And that could, if once that comes out, that could be, you could almost envision how that could begin to populate the maturity matrix, right? You could say, okay, everybody has to learn this now. This is new, right? And so you'll be able to populate it in there, tag resources, and start to put those benchmarks out there.
Right.
Okay.
And the committee can weigh in on at this point. Any member of the committee can put comments to the team that's working on those rules. When they go out for public comment, you definitely can weigh in. Yeah. Okay.
Good. All right. And then just moving on. So I think you guys answered the question. If we go on to tab 4, amongst the chairs, we had talked about, this lighthouse, this exchange of networking groups was really one of our strongest recommendations. And do we have the bandwidth to start kind of working on this one now? But what I heard in our conversation is it sounds like we might start working on this now as an adjunct to our challenges, right? As a communication mechanism for our challenges. So, which would start with, I think, Farad and Nigel, you guys started a list. It's on the speakers tab. We could start creating some artifacts of who these potential networking groups are. I'm almost envisioning creating like a data flow map, right? So if you hit this group, then they're going to hit this type of, we could actually probably create something really cool here. So I think it's just a matter of getting the list refined.
Hey, Dave, you want to advance the slide to the next board? Yeah.
It's pretty underwhelming, but
let me ask a question. So I think it's all a great idea, but I'm thinking back to the challenge.gov and think of a lighthouse. The question is, do people maybe ignore things that come from the government because they say, it's too difficult to work for the government, I have no idea, the RFP doesn't make sense, all these things that others here have mentioned earlier. Is something like challenge.gov the thing that would make the lighthouse, let's say, on the right frequency?
Maybe. I think so. I think you can get different interests, but then I think you can reinforce it with those networking groups because they can, they do have experience in working with the government, so they can kind of demystify some of that. But at the same time, if you're running challenges that expose people and somebody gets a sole source, or you engage an academic incubator that wasn't even on the radar screen, and then you publicize that and market it, right? You kind of create a groundswell around it. I think they complement each other, David.
I have a question. May not be related, but I guess my brain is all over the place. Would there be any value? So we're talking about new entrants into the vendors or suppliers, right? But would best in class, just thinking out loud, would some of them be sitting current vendors at EPA? And the reason why I'm asking that, we may be able to find out a feel for how some of the smaller businesses became engaged there.
Yeah, so the EPA has its own mechanism of tapping into innovative new entrants because its space is, its domain is so like defined, right?
Right.
So that's certainly, we can certainly engage.
I mean, we could lessons learned or feedback from their vendors or something. Maybe we could pick up on.
Okay.
And
I
maybe-
think we should add a sticky under the
Yeah.
challenge section.
And you were talking about the folks from EPA when they came and talked to us about the best in class work that they were doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what she's saying is, and I don't want to speak for you, Mamie, but I think what she's saying is like, so does EPA have a little bit of experience with this because they're so focused on the climate and sustainability? They probably already have had to go out and find unique companies. And are there any lessons learned that we could bring into our own challenge.gov kind of work? I think, is that what you were saying, Mamie?
Not only the vendor side, their acquisition workforce is probably at another level around environmental things,
right?
Too. There may be some lessons learned there.
Yes,
that's what I'm talking. All the above.
Right.
I mean, not so much. I know we've talked. Yeah, we could talk to the experts. I understand that the federal employees and have them as speakers, and maybe we've already had them. I'm sure. But I'm saying we could go a little bit further and probe more because they had to go through some of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have Jenny Romer, who is on the committee. She's on the Policy and Practice Subcommittee, and she's been super helpful just on different things. But she would definitely be the right person at EPA to help answer what you're asking, Mamie.
Okay, I put a sticky on tab, back at tab 2 on that.
Yeah, because their vendors are probably holding some type of certifications too, as to their level of expertise or based on past performance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, yeah, I think that's good. Just moving ahead here. So on the lighthouse, the other thing is Nigel and Farad, because you guys kind of started this running with this, but I think we should be thinking also about categorizations of networking groups. So networking groups that work with small business, networking groups that work with minority-owned businesses, networking groups that work with disabled companies, networking groups that work, or accelerators that work on innovation. And then we can kind of create this listings of those groups in those different categories. Some might bridge multiple, but so that we're kind of creating a, we're getting the coverage we want, right? We're creating that mesh of massive connectivity by understanding that we've gotten each of these categories covered. So I think a little exploration into what those categories might be as we move forward too.
I would shape that in a way so we don't walk ourselves into controversy and problems, that we leverage the existing pathways. Because if we leverage the Community Navigators Program, if we leverage the SBA National Partner Network, if we leverage the Minority Business Development Agency network, if we leverage EPA, right? So that way we're still touching on the same ones, but we're doing it through existing cleared avenues.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
To do that, yeah.
And then, because if you could think about it, what you want to be able to eventually create is an actual exchange, meaning when something needs to go out, it can go out through the entire exchange, or it can be targeted to certain elements of the exchange that you're trying to narrow your focus around, to create that widest, light for people to come into government and mechanism. Okay. All right, so how are we doing on time? So Boris, I don't know if we have anybody from the public on, but if we do, now would probably be a good time for us to see.
We do not today, so.
Okay. All right, so David, if we could just go back to slide 1 there. That's all I had teed up for today. So we can, just to remind everybody, we do have a admin meeting next week. So Farad and I will kind of go through this, digest this information, and lay out some activities for us to accomplish for next week. And if we can get any of the speakers on board, we'll make sure we get them. We'll build that into the agenda.
Kristen, can I just make a comment real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've used this site, but this is just a suggestion right now. I can't think of the limitations or the boundaries, but maybe to help, maybe if you or anyone, I'm just saying you in general, to go to maybe sam.gov and look and see what RFIs, or RFPs have been put out there by different agencies. You can do a search for sustainability and see if there's been proposals or requests for information that have been put out there for different agencies. You'll have an idea of what agencies are looking for those things regarding sustainability and what their requirements are as it relates to sustainability. And that may help you narrow your field down, and they may help you narrow your field down as far as building your lighthouse as well.
Okay, I'm just making a note. So you're saying like we can, just as a random person, anybody can go into sam.gov and query the database as far as what's been put out?
I'm not sure anymore. It's been a while.
I think you can set up, you can set up an account. Yeah,
I think you can, but because I think there is a way that you can search just to see what's out there. Like I said, it's been a while, but we can just consider that as a possible touch point. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay, I'm making a note. All right. Yep, I made a note of that. If there's anybody on the committee that wants to do that or get a start on it, we can take a look at it. Oh, what is that title? What just came up on the screen? Was that?
I think that's
the computer's acting weird.
Oh, okay. I'm like, hey. So
Okay.
Okay.
Chris,
so I think we have a.
Chris, we're down to 10 minutes. I just want to make sure we have asked questions of the public or anything.
Okay.
Or just,
yeah, we did that. No public participants today.
No, okay, no, okay. Just want to make sure.
Yep. We nope, we did that. Okay. So I'm all set. Let me just open it up to the floor for the subcommittee members. Any other comments, suggestions that we want to talk about today before we adjourn?
Yeah.
I'm going to volunteer to go on sam.gov and do a sustainability search.
Oh,
actually, I'm not going to do it, but I'll get the info.
I love that even more. Made me go. I love that. That's awesome.
Use the network.
That's a true boss. I'm not gonna
I love it, boss lady.
Does.
Yes. Good. Awesome. No, that's great. And all right, everybody. I'm gonna Boris, I think we can adjourn.
Yeah, one comment I wanted to go back to is there is a number of people at GSA that are looking at this report very closely. And so we're getting feedback from different offices. So that's going to be a process in itself, pulling it all together and then just making sure we reconcile. Just by glancing at some of them, I definitely have seen a strong interest in the maturity model. That one stood out but I haven't read all the comments, but just wanted to put that out there. And then we're going to figure out a way to how to best present this feedback to you all. So some of the feedback really doesn't involve the committee because some of the feedback is about how we're going to implement this. And it gets more to GSA, like we need to get some resources, we get to some funding to implement some of the things that we want to do. I'm talking about the whole report now. So, but there are a good number of suggestions and recommendations. And so we have to kind of sift through that and work through it within GSA as it's making its way to the administrator. So just want to put that out there. So that's,
I think that's great. The
So
only
there's a-
one thing I'd ask you, Boris, is if we're going, like, if you're getting feedback and we're going in a
Yeah.
track, like if we're starting to diverge, just let us know so we don't
Yeah,
waste
Yeah,
any
if I-
time or effort.
and that's where Stefan and I will definitely do our best to help. If we see anything that's, oh, you know, but we just had this conversation and we haven't seen anything that will cause concern to this point, so.
Okay, awesome.
But
That's
they want to put that out there. And yeah, so I think we'll plan. And so we're going to continue the same cadence of every 3 weeks, we'll have a public meeting. And then the following week will be an administrative meeting. And those are, again, Kristen and Farah, you guys kind of lead those and shape those however you want. And it sounds to me like a whole lot of discovery to continue on.
Yeah, very good.
Good to see everybody back, and then we'll go ahead and adjourn today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody. It was a great session. So I appreciate
Thanks, everybody.
your engagement.
Good to see you.